Hi, everybody. Over the last couple of years, I've met some really amazing people around Fort Wayne, both through interviews and just chance meetings. And I just had a talk recently on Zoom, like we're all doing, with a couple friends of mine. One is Regina, and the other is K2. And they are both incredibly smart people and thoughtful people, and they always challenge me. And so I recorded a little discussion with them regarding the COVID-19 quarantine that we're in and the effects of that and how we can grow to uh, show respect and love for one another even in isolation. But beyond that, just the dialogue of getting away from judgment that so often happens in America, we're seeing right now, not only in this crisis and around the world, but during the whole political situation, we're throwing stones at each other, and I've certainly been guilty of that. So I invite you to watch this wide-ranging conversation. It's just part of it, where we discuss vulnerability, we discuss consciousness, getting along with one another. Also, because everybody has different spiritual and religious beliefs, we kind of stay away from specifics there, but we do mention some things that are individual beliefs or at least exploration. So sit back and enjoy it. And if you have any questions or comments, let me know. Thanks.
With the project I was working on that I originally talked to you and Regina about, with the if whatever the definition of as we decide or don't decide is emotional intelligence, I thought, well, since we're all in lockdown, I want to hear about hopes and dreams of what we may possibly, because often people look at the negative of this current situation. I want to find out if people have positive expectations or hopes or are seeing something positive coming out of this. I have got Regina Leffers online, and she is an author, and she's a former college professor, and she just wrote a book. Hi, Regina. Tell us a little about yourself and the book you wrote.
Thanks, Joe. My name's Regina Leffers, and this book on consciousness, it's called What is Consciousness? And it is written because there is no available book out there that actually uses non-academic language so that people can understand. And I wrote it for a couple of reasons. The first is that I think it's the most important thing that we have to do in life is understand our own consciousness and hopefully the consciousness of those around us. So the people that we interact with. Second reason is because that I wrote the book is because after the last election, I realized that people don't understand consciousness itself. What does a person need to, what capacity do they need to function from inside of themselves in order to govern a diverse population? Now, that's a basic thing that we should all understand if we're voting. Okay, so that's the second reason. And I'm calling this the third reason, but it's the main reason. I feel like people simply hate each other. They're not listening. People are, my friends listen, but from all the comments that I see on Facebook and hear on news reports, and just you just recognize everywhere that if a person expresses a point of view that somebody disagrees with, they simply cut them off or, destroy them, end that Facebook friendship. People have forgotten how to talk with each other and disagree and still be kind, understanding. So my thinking is that if somebody understands the consciousness, the dominant facet of consciousness from which they live their lives for the most part, and if they understand consciousness itself and the way we grow they might be able to recognize where this person is functioning from, with whom they disagree, and understand where they're at. With each facet of consciousness, there are really important things to recognize, and that is that as we grow in consciousness, we include more of what exists inside of our own definition of who we are, who and what we are, who we love, who we care about. So we move from caring about just our own pets, or just our own backyard, to caring about all biological creatures on this earth and the earth itself. So things expand. Our ability to care expands as we grow in consciousness. And the thing that's so really interesting and fun is that everybody has experienced one of those extreme expansions of consciousness, even if for just moments, when we're with big nature, at the beach or in a redwood forest or looking up at a night sky. So that's the reason I wrote What is Consciousness?
And having read it, it's a very accessible book, which I know you said that was one of your goals, to make it very accessible, because having come from the classroom setting, even though that has its own language perhaps, and also just your understanding of psychology, your understanding of brain science, your understanding of all the things that go into that, those do get into specialized terminology, like you say, that sometimes can set people aside enough that they say, I don't understand what they're saying, so I can't do this. And so having read your book, all but I think the last chapter at this point, I certainly understand that. I'm curious now that you did that, and having talked to you before, in the current climate that we're in, and I agree with you, and I think many people would agree with you, it's as if we don't have tools, like you suggesting. We don't know what we don't know. We don't know how to begin that. So the question is, why did you decide to call this book, for instance, What is Consciousness versus what is maturity? What is emotional intelligence? What is good human cooperation? Why did you choose consciousness?
Okay, the reason I chose consciousness is because it includes all of me. So our consciousness includes our emotional intelligence. It includes our gut. It's not just an intellectual thing that we understand or grow in. It really is physical. It's not really about becoming mature. We can all, from every facet of consciousness, we can express a maturity. But the fact that we grow in consciousness, and it is a physical thing in the sense that truly as we grow, we include more of what exists in the scope of how we define and think about ourselves.
You explain that very well, from the physical to the biological to the spiritual to the universal to the cellular level, even if you want to go that way. So you do explain it. But it does take it takes a bit of a leap of faith, but you handle it very well in the book. And I don't say that just fawning over it. I just mean your book goes a lot into that. And I think that's so powerful, because the implication is, beyond skin color, beyond belief system, beyond economic or any other way you want to look at it, we're all part of one big consciousness. I was watching a movie the other night on Netflix, and they showed birds flying in unison, a big group, a flock of birds. And that immediately hit me as the same thing. These birds, they knew each other. They were in perfect synchronicity, if you call it that. So I think that's powerful with your book. And in this current situation where people are so separate, and a lot of us say, well, is this going to bring us closer together? Because now we've got to stop talking about as much perhaps borders, as much about us versus them, and saying, wait, we're all in this together. Do you, and it's a big question, but do you, or K2 for that matter, have hope that the current situation with the corona virus and the isolation that's going on, do you have any hope that this is going to produce mutual understanding, or produce a sympathetic listening to one another that wasn't there before?
I find the setup of your question, Joe, particularly interesting because it goes straight to the point of what the problem is. The setup is in that there's something unique and special about us and about a particular group of us that if everybody else isn't following, then they're excluded. That realm of thinking comes out of a European, American, Western contextualization of the world that is an imposition upon the human spirit. But there have always been, in every society, any place in the world, there have always been those people who understood something different, something more holistic, if you will. People like the indigenous folks here, people like the Taoists in the East, people like the West Africans who understood their relationship to nature and to everything that is. Putting it in the context of today, and the question you want to get to, will C-19 give us the possibility of seeing one another as human beings? No, it won't. C-19 won't do that. We have to do that for ourselves. But C-19 has created an environment in which, if we step back from our, as my brother expressed it last night, from our ethical egoism, if we can step back from that, from seeing the world only from our perspective, and understand that C-19, this virus, is simply a part of the universe, and that we are part of the universe as well, and that C-19 is a part of us. And if we allow the people who engineered C-19 to take C-19 and make it a medium of fear, and we buy that idea, then we become susceptible to the virus. If we understand that we are C-19 and that there really is nothing to fear, then yes, we can have a conversation with one another and get past all the isms we have created, all the disciplines, all the colleges that we have set up, all the programmed learning, all the Zooming that we have done. We can get past that and understand that there is just one consciousness in the universe, and we are a simple grain of sand on the beach, and we ought to stop taking ourselves so seriously. We are all going to die. We cannot get around that. We don't know what it means when we die. We have ideas. We project these ideas out into the universe, and we want other people to buy into that to make us feel better. But we don't know what is beyond the veil. So if we can accept the fact that we are going to die and live in the moment now and live well, we can die well. So that when we transition, wherever we transition to, it'll be where we're supposed to go. We can only always be where we are, not where we think we are. See, the Western world, Western man, white folks elevated thought to the status of God. But something preceded thought.
Can I ask you a question? I actually have two questions.
Yes, ma'am.
Has this circumstance helped you make any adjustments to be more aligned with who you are in the world? And the reason I'm asking that is because I've had a couple of, I'm experiencing that. And then the other question is, do you experience people around you, people you know and love? Do you experience them rethinking, coming more fully into what you just described, that wholeness, the taking themselves as a whole instead of just an intellectual way of behaving?
The first question, no, this I've been living with this my whole life. I've been Black my whole life, okay? And being Black in America is being in a C-19 situation every minute of every day. So no, that hasn't changed my consciousness as well in any way. What it has done is made me more aware of the ways that the managers of the people who are in control, the elite, that the managers of the elite instill fear into the body and into the collective mind so that they can control. And so my job is to help people get past the fear, to understand there's nothing to be afraid of, because the only thing that they're teaching you to be afraid of, that they're inspiring you to be afraid of, is dying. You're gonna die. It's a simple proposition.
Well, I'm experiencing that too. This is I feel like there is a major wake up happening. As soon as people stop working, it's like they're home, they're enjoying their family, or realizing they need to not be with these people. That's happening too.
Yep.
And major life shifts are happening into I feel like people are realizing what they need to shift in order to hold integrity with themselves.
I think that what's happening, Regina, is that the planet is sending us a message.
Yeah.
Okay? That this living being that we are a part of is telling us that there is a realignment that she is doing, and we can either go along or get out.
Yeah.
The job of those who are conscious is to help those who are not conscious step across the line or to grab the ring and know that it's okay. It's going to be okay. As long as you generate the thought that it's going to be okay. Why? Because I'm okay right now. I'm good right now. You don't have to worry about tomorrow because you don't have any control over that. Right now is where you have to act. You can't act tomorrow and you can't act yesterday, but you have to do it right now. And so if I'm okay with dying right now, then when it comes time to die, I'm gonna be okay. Now is every moment that we have ever lived or ever will live is right now. And when we can understands the wrong word.
Wrong word.
When we can feel that, when we take that into our being and allow it to emanate, to explode out of us, then we wake up. We wake up to the sunshine. We wake up to the birds. We wake up to the children playing in the street. We wake up. Because going to work every day, people sleep. You don't have to be awake to go to work.
Well, I think you two are rarefied company that way, in that you were talking about sleeping or waking, or I know those terms a lot of people are throwing around, but I mean, it's in many ways you two are trying to, and I've just, what little time I've spent with both of you, live within that moment. When we were talking earlier about the social manifestation of anger or fear or hatred or exclusion, and again, those are going into those terms, but how do we learn to speak into what we consider either an injustice or a misunderstanding with each other without throwing stones, without harming one another in such a way that immediately closes the other person off to further conversation, which is what we see a lot. As we were talking in our little meeting, I've never seen in my 58 years the country divided in such a way as I have now, in that it's probably always been like that. It's just more evident than ever before. Okay. So the question is, for instance, when you address any of these things, how do we address misconceptions or injustices in a respectful way and continue the conversation?
By being respectful. By being respectful and honoring the other person's life. By being vulnerable.
Bingo.
You know,
that's the key, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the key. I mean, I don't know everything, but I do know everything about me. I know I am the ultimate authority in my life. About anything else, I don't know. I don't know. Okay? So if you ask me about what Donald Trump ought to do about the coronavirus, I don't know. Donald Trump is doing what Donald Trump think he need to do. So what do you think you ought to do about that, Ketu? I ain't going to try and do nothing about that because I can't do anything about that. But I can do something about me, and that's where I'm going to stay. And my invitation to everybody else is be yourself. Be your authentic. Find out what it means to be authentic.
The reason I feel like you're so skilled, Ketu, in exactly that, because you spent so much time really getting actual, you corralled all of the thoughts about who you are into yourself. Instead of accepting anybody, you recognize that anybody else's perspective about you makes no difference. There's nothing in it. it's nothing to you. Your perspective about you, who you are, is what is, it gives you a real foundational integrity. And I'm still learning that. That's one of the things that I'm learning during this time of being here at Three Rivers, living on the 10th floor.
Mm-hmm.
I realized living here, what it's brought home to me is places where I wasn't, allowing myself to feel what I would really like to do. And so I bought a house because I realized I didn't have integrity with this place. This is not me anymore. And I found a house, it came to me. Other things that I'm watching for, what comes to me is really what has integrity with me. Okay, I don't have to make anything happen. And I just went and looked at it and bought it. And so that's one of the things that I'm really excited about, that I'm feeling more at home with who I am.
Well, in your book, Regina, the part that stopped me and would stop a lot of people is so interesting in that, for me, where you say, I'm going to be vulnerable here. And when K2 was talking earlier, in my understanding, he was saying, once we understand we're just a grain of sand, there's a humility about that what is our choice but to be vulnerable with each other, to be humble, if you will, with either the universe or each other, as if to say, I am just a speck, if you will. And when you talked about your success or not in your marriages, it's a very interesting moment. It really is. And I applaud you for that, because how you showed a vulnerability in there, which I think is very powerful, because we all have similar situations. They may or may not be listed with a certificate of divorce, but they are out there, something really that we'd rather not perhaps talk about, or we don't mind talking about. But I applaud you for that, because one thing you're saying there to me is you're learning more about yourself and how to be yourself, whatever the situation is, and getting back to being respectful while you do it. So that's, to me, that's really powerful stuff. And Regina, you were saying earlier when K2 was talking about that, you had the bingo moment when he was speaking. So you do agree with some of that, I would assume.
Well, I really hoped, I knew that writing it, I had to be absolutely 100% vulnerable and really use myself as examples, because we all feel so ashamed. I mean, many of us do. Just feel ashamed of different areas of our lives. And I wanted people to really recognize themselves in me. And I am not ashamed. You know, the vulnerability is in really me just, hard to put into words, but recognizing the tenderness of that. Of all the quote mistakes, those are just those quote mistakes, or even desires expressed in trying to make something happen. That's the expression of a culture that I didn't form myself. I didn't make it. I didn't make those rules. And those rules, we get to choose whether they apply to us or not. And sometimes they will.
And that mirrors very much, in my understanding, what K2 was saying, that if you are comfortable within yourself, if you learn who you are, and obviously I'll be doing that to my very deathbed. K2 and Regina, getting back to our situation now, and K2, what you said was so valuable to me, but it's the idea also is it fair to say, can we say, are there, and I know we were talking about just pure communication is the step, is that the step to starting to cross those barriers of what we put up as barriers of race and economics and political belief and everything? Is it just a matter of, as we've talked before, sitting down with people without judgment? Is that as simple as it gets?
Can you stop judging yourself? I mean, I think that's the fundamental question. Can you stop judging yourself? If you can stop judging yourself, then there's no need to judge anybody else. Because judging somebody else is just it's a device for not looking at myself. So judgment is not necessary. Relationship is what's necessary. In relationship, you can't have, relationship takes two. Even if I'm going to have a relationship with myself, I have to understand that I am having a conversation with a deeper me. And then I have to learn to listen to that self, to that aspect of myself that is informing me, but it's not doing it with words. Life is relational. We are relating all the time. If you go into the woods, if you stand on the edge of the woods and you listen, you'll hear the birds singing. You'll hear the animals scurrying through the woods. When you enter the woods, you change the woods. And the woods changes you. The problem with Western thinkers is we don't change when we go into the woods. We want to become the king of the woods.
That's really a good way to say that, Ketu.
That is a problem. That is the problem. If we can step back from our ethical egoism and understand that when I look in Regina's face, I'm looking in my own face and see what the face is telling me, then I understand what relationship is. It's not about dominating. Western culture wants to dominate. It has dominated for the last 500 years. And before that, there was another aspect of Western culture that was dominating. And before that, there was another aspect of Western culture that was dominating. And before that, there was a culture that came out of Africa that was dominating. And where the domination of the West comes from is from that. We have to be clear on who we are. We have to be clear. We are cells in the body of the world. We're grains of sand on the beach. We're stars in the cosmos. We ain't all we think we are. We got to let go of that idea, that thought of ourselves. Like Foundation says, we got to get rid of those demons. Those thoughts are demons. If life is an idea, then I can control you because I control the idea.
The story.
Yes.
In a sense. So have you guys seen The Matrix?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So in a sense, I've kind of gone around during this time feeling like the places where I was plugged in, I'm unplugged from. And I feel like that is happening all over. People are
unplugged.
Mm-hmm. Going back to work, is at the end of this time of sheltering in place, going back into everyday lives, it's going to be different.
Yes, it is.
I mean, I know it's going to be different for me because just, because I've unplugged myself even more now.
Are you calling that, though, freedom, or are you calling that forced to not rely on the same social or economic constraints or the whatever you had before? What are you calling that?
Wait a
My
minute.
experience.
Wait. What do you call it?
Well, if you first ask me, thank you. I was given gifts during my life, getting back to, and I wanted to ask you guys this. I have been given gifts during my life that I call suffering. And my suffering is nothing compared to anybody else. I know that sounds like apologizing. What I mean is, I've had bouts of mental illness, what we call obsessive compulsive disorder, where I've been so disabled that I couldn't really work. I've had various things through my life, events that happened to me that now I say that was a gift. And I don't say that any other way than to say it was through those kind of things, going through those sufferings, going through any adversity in my life, as we say, unless we hit those, I don't learn. So it is by hitting roadblocks that I become who I am. So I look at this, anything like this, as saying, rather than saying, and this is getting back to what you were saying, K2, about making peace with things. If it's winter, boy, yeah, I'd like warm weather once in a while, but if I don't take advantage of bright today, if I don't say, who am I today, who are we today, and what can we be in this cold, in the snow, then what am I living for? If I can't be, and I know suffering produces in each of us, I know for me, I get pretty wimpy, and so I'm like, let me out. But that being said, in retrospect, if I have the blessing, as I call, to look back and say, okay, that changed me in a really good way because it unplugged me. Right now I'm unplugged. It's that way, and you all are, we're all in our various stages of life. I'm kind of trying to create my own business, but it's very unplugged. I don't have the same social or economic outlets and the automatic living that I had before. And I think maybe, Regina, you're talking about that. I don't have, in the old days when I worked a so-called 9-to-5 job, it was like that dominated much of my thinking because that was my schedule. I had responsibilities for it, but I also then said that also limited my ability to see bigger things. So I'm wondering that's, I don't know if that's the answer that anybody would want, K2, but that's what I would say. And so I do feel unplugged here, but I'm excited. I choose today, and I always say that I can't guarantee tomorrow either. And I've learned that through hardship. Today, I'm excited about it. And that today is the reason why I wanted to talk to people like you two, is to say, I'm excited about the possibility. I'm excited about the shuffling of things to get people to thinking differently, to letting go. And it's going to be very difficult for a lot of us in all kinds of ways, but there's also quite a bit of excitement for me. And that's what I was hoping when I wanted to do this little chat with you two, to say, is there something that we can look forward to in that?
I want to tell you guys this. There's a feeling that I had in my whole body the other day when I made the offer on that house. And I feel it as integrity with who I am. So more during this time of isolation, more of who I thought I ought to be got pulled apart, so that I feel freer. You asked if it's a feeling of freedom. I have a great feeling of freedom that I've not had before, and I've not ever experienced this feeling of total integrity with myself. And I can't explain it. I can't really put it into words. The words, I've told you, K2, that when I listen to you talk, So often the words that you speak, I feel in the cells of my body, okay? And that's we are because we live in our heads so much, and because that's been glorified as the best, so the feeling of integrity that I feel, this is the first time in my life I feel integrity in the cells of my body, like in the same way that I feel Ketu's poetry in the cells of my body, in the same way that I feel that I felt when I wrote that book, when I wrote What is Consciousness and rewrote it to make it as much from my whole body as I possibly could. The not just intellectual concepts, but actual, what I've tried to do was be so vulnerable that people who read it would feel the edges of their own self-judgment soften. That is my biggest hope for that. But yes, freedom, integrity, and I'm telling you guys something that I don't know how to say any other way, feeling integrity in the cells of my body.
It's so interesting. K2 was talking about stopping judging ourselves, and most of us, as you two know better, but I think your book even addresses it, when we grow up, we need the constraint of our parents giving us rules. That is how we acquire our safety, by having a set of rules. And as we get into adolescence and older, we're slowly breaking those or severely breaking them, depending on each of us individually. But that being said, and then it's up to us, not only beyond who we are as what we like to do or not like to do, what we believe, and are we okay to be judged by other people by breaking whether it's religious or other social rules, as long as they're not, manic or insane, to explore some of those things. So it takes not only vulnerability to be able to say that, but and I hate to use words like courage, but it takes sureness, maybe that's a better word.
Courage too. Mm-hmm. Definitely takes courage.
K2, I don't know your biography beyond what I know from the bits and pieces we've talked. Was your growing in self-awareness from the adversity that was either thrust upon you or you thrust upon yourself? As much as, in other words, is that how you came to this point of being K2 in 2020?
Yeah, I was going to prison. Prison was my Ph.D. Prison gave me the opportunity. Prison 5 years in prison was my C-19 moment. It gave me the time and space to look into me. And what I saw needed to be changed. And I set about trying to figure out what that meant. And I'm still in the process of doing it. What Regina has spoken so eloquently to in the purchase of her house is answering to what my mama used to call that first mind, that presence within us that tells us what we should be doing from moment to moment. Society teaches us how to not listen to that and to rationalize not listening to that it has called intuition. Yes, it is in, but it's not charging us anything. It's not an intuition, it's an inspiration.
Yeah.
And breathing it in, it is always informing us what we are supposed to be doing and when we are supposed to be doing it. But we have tuned it out because we have found another way to be in the world that gives us the illusion of being in charge. We come back to that moment of true knowing and truthfulness, of authenticity in what you spoke to, Joe, and that's in our suffering. You don't learn anything by being happy. You learn by being in pain, because pain makes you conscious of the moment. You are in the moment when you are in pain. But the society teaches you to run away from the pain, to medicate, to self-medicate, to go see the doctor or the analyst or the therapist, to go see somebody else so they can tell you how to be you. Now, if you really use the power of thought and ask yourself, how can somebody else tell me how to be me? Then you come back to, it's all here. I was born with it. I was born into it. I simply have to let it be and be comfortable with what shows up and not with the idea of myself. In prison, I learned to get past the idea of myself, because the idea of myself was toxic and insane. I was crazy as hell. And I understood, oh, you're crazy as hell. You need to do something. And so I took a look, what do I need to do? And I didn't know where to look, but there were books, and I started reading. And in every book I read, there was a kernel that told me who I was. It's not an invention, it's an uncovering. You have to allow yourself to be. You have to give yourself permission to be the revolutionary who you were born into this world to be. You didn't come here
That's
to
a
be
powerful
somebody
statement.
else.
Yeah.
You did not come here to be somebody else. You came here to be you, and nobody else can tell you how to do that. Your parents can set a framework for you, but no, it wasn't my parents who did that. It was my parents in community that did that. It was my community that set my course aright, even when I went wrong. I knew I was wrong because I was out of touch with my community. And that community is part of me today. The last place I would ever go live is where I grew up. But that's my community. It has changed radically. But the people I grew up with, who are all over the United States now, all over the world actually, and some no longer here, they're still my community. And I have added to my community by being here. In every place I've been, I've added to my community. I haven't always done it consciously because I didn't know what I was doing. I was trying to figure it out. And I'm still trying to figure it out. But we don't know. And it's okay to say, I don't know. And sit down and be silent and be informed. Because if you learn how to really be silent, you can be informed. And both of you have the ability to be silent. And by that I mean, when somebody else is talking, you can silence the demons that are running wild in your head, wanting to interject. You both have that capacity. Those are the people you want to talk to. Everybody else, it don't make no sense talking to them because they can't hear you. They cannot hear your vulnerability. They see your vulnerability and they want to try and take advantage, which means that then you got to fight, because you can't allow yourself to be run over, not by ignorance. So, I mean, it ain't rocket science. C19 is here because we are not in charge. We are not in charge.
Which also means listen to yourself, and that, to me, that gets back to Regina saying you feeling something in a cellular level. I've heard different. I heard a woman on a podcast once say that she felt with her body as much as her mind and her eyes, and that's foreign to me. And I mean that in a bit of a mournful way, but also an expectation that I want to learn more. And Ketu, getting back to what you say, I agree. I have noise going in my head. They often say if you're going to try meditation, you first have to silence the demons, because they're going to be the ones, if you try to silence yourself, they're just yelling, or condemning. And it takes a while to silence the noise. Or as Regina said, for instance, as a basic exercise in the early part of her book, take time to let something soak in that you see as beautiful or unusual, or go up and hug a tree, put your arms around a tree and just try to feel what that feels like to you. And you may say that's elementary or not, but what that is saying, if we are sharing this business together, if we are interchanging with each other by some energy, let's start by doing it. Let's say, who are you? Who are you? Who are you? But then who am I? And that's also just by that silence you're talking about, and being okay with that. That's hard, but that's okay.
Well, let's just do this little exercise for a second, and just take Ketu's word, HUEMAN, human, and apply it to all of us. Women and men, we're all people. And there are no special skills to be in touch with your body. And it's a human part of our consciousness to walk into, to develop. One other thing I wanted to just suggest to you, Joe, just as a something to try, okay? And that is, when you feel pain, emotional pain from a memory, whether it's from childhood or from anything that has ever happened, when you have that come into your mind, walk into it like you're opening a door and just feel it. Kind of lean into it. Let yourself feel it, because that action is what allows it to dissipate. And the very things that make you bring to the table some apology, the judgments, that treat that just like pain. Walk into it. Be with it. Meditation is not about like emptying the mind. That never happens. It really is about noticing what's there, noticing if a story is developing, and notice that it's a story. Notice if a thought is there, and notice that it's a thought. And just doing that really starts to help us feel more present in our bodies and emotions as well.
A way to get to that from the verbal, intellectual need to understand, Joe, is to put feeling in one hand and emotion in the other. Because too often we see feeling and emotion as the same thing. Feeling is something that the body does. Emotion is something that thought does, that we intellectualize. We take feeling into the mind and raise a thought. And then we focus on the thought and say that we are feeling. No, we're not feeling, we're emoting. There's a difference. Living in feeling is getting close to what it means to be human.
Good.
Living in emotion is living in the empire. You're in the empire of others' control.
So good.
I mean, and part of so much of this is about integrating who we are as a complete entity. But so much of it also is when we talk about society or when we talk about social strictures, we're talking about separating. First, we have to be, and Ketu, you've always said that, we have to be comfortable within ourselves, and then we can start relating to other people in a way that's not judgmental. So in many ways, vulnerability is that idea is like, I'm cleaving from my pride, or I'm cleaving from my guilt, or I'm cleaving from whatever what may be holding me back. So in many ways, that is a powerful thing. Vulnerability in many ways is saying, take a shot at me. I'm going to show you some of who I am. And if you're going to take a shot at me, well, that's your business. I'm offering this up as kind of a peace offering or a meaning of honesty. So I think that all those things are valuable. As you guys are rightly surmising, it's as much for my curiosity as anything, but you two it's always an honor to speak with you two, because even though we just start to skim the surface of things, your insights are incredibly valuable, and your honesty. So I appreciate that with both of you. I'm going to in the time remaining that we don't know of this particular lockdown, and it's been a life theme of mine in the last 10 years, is to, rather than hide away, is to get in with people. And I think that's part of that's feeling that discomfort. It may be saying, whatever I'm doing, whatever the situation is, if it was a feeling within me, Regina or Ketu, it's the feeling is, do you realize we're here at this moment? This is holy ground. I'm looking at any interactions with mine, I'm using the term here, holy ground. This is a holy moment. This is church. This is a spiritual moment. And this is what I want. This is the blessing for right now. This is you two have blessed me, whatever terminology you want to use. You two have blessed me. You have allowed me to have a spiritual environment for a few minutes here that we've been together that has been incredibly valuable to me. And I want to enter into that with other people as well. And I don't think that's necessarily something I don't know if it was handed to me, as we've used that terminology, or if I decided to enter into it. But whatever the case may be, it's incredibly valuable. So thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
In the process, in the process of growth, there is the realization that there is no need ever to explain anything. There's no need to explain, especially when we're talking to people who hear us. So being able to step out of the explanatory self into a more authentic self is a process. You're in that process Now, you've been in that process ever since we met. You're a journalist. You ask questions, and you're really asking the questions of yourself, but you're posing them to other people. So just recognize that the answers that you get back are the answers that you're giving yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's the three-legged stool that I talk about. It's story, identity, and interest. Self-interest is the only interest. You have to be interested in yourself to be interested in anybody else. And if you recognize your own interests, you'll see it in other people. And it'll come back to you and feed you what you need. All we have to do is look at nature, Joe. Nature is always giving and taking. That's what we're doing with one another. We give and take. But when we try to control that, things go haywire. So I appreciate being invited into this conversation. I want to thank you for that.
Well, both of you, thank you. I hope we can do it again, or if you have another idea of a person to, I of course, as you said, I find it very valuable not only for myself, but I also think that it's just it can be a powerful moment, and so thank you. So
That sounds great.
Yep.
And I love talking with you two very much. Now, I know what I love is listening. That's what I love. I love having the awakenings happen inside of me.
well, it's so good to see both of you, and thank you so much.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you, Joe.
See you later.
See you, Ketu.
Okay.
Bye.